Welcome to this Lofoten Legends interview podcast. My name is Steffan Griffin. I'm a clinical doctor working in primary care and sports medicine in the UK, and I'm a part-time PhD student at the University of Edinburgh.
Thanks, I'm Jari Dahmen. I'm also a clinical doctor working in orthopaedic surgery in Amsterdam, working in the Amsterdam University Medical Centers. Currently finishing up my PhD as well, part-time, which I'll be defending in October.
Amazing. So we're joined by two global icons of sport and exercise medicine. We're going to introduce you, but I hope you'll forgive us. We are going to read to make sure that we include everything and don't make anything up. So I've got the privilege and pleasure of introducing yourself. Professor Wayne Derman, who is Director and Chair of the Institute of Sport and Exercise Medicine at Stellenbosch University. He is also the Director of the FIFA Medical Centre of Excellence and Co-Director of the South African IOC Research Centre for Injury Prevention and Protection of Health of the Athlete. That's quite a mouthful, sorry. Perhaps best known for your long association with the Paralympics. I believe you first started as the SA Team Chief Medical Officer in 2012 at London. And you're now in your role with the IPC, International Paralympic Committee, where you've recently been appointed Medical Director. So we all know you for all your work in injury and illness surveillance, especially in the Paralympic Games. So welcome.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
Awesome, and I have the privilege to introduce Professor Martin Schwellnus, and he's a professor in sports and exercise medicine at the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Pretoria in South Africa, and you are internationally regarded as one of the academic leaders in the field of sports and exercise medicine. You're a specialist sport and exercise medicine physician and the director of the International Olympic Committee Research Center of South Africa. You are the president of the College of Sports and Exercise Medicine of South Africa and the past director of the Sport, Exercise Medicine and Lifestyle Institute, in brackets SEMLI, or SEMLI, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. You are a long-standing member of the IOC Medical Commission, and you are also a member of the editorial board in several international journals, including the BJSM, and we're both very happy to have both of you on the podcast. Looking forward to this session.
Absolutely. We were sat down at lunch and we were advised to have a bit of an icebreaker to start things off. So the question we've got for you, if you had to answer any of that, is, would you rather have hands for feet or feet for hands?
That's a very good question. Martin, I think I would have hands for feet. Yeah. And you?
Professionally, no. If it's in my professional work, I think I would like to have one hand and one foot, and have Wayne have the other hand and foot, and then we would be together, and I'm sure we'd make a good team with your. I think I need the right hand though, the right hand, right foot.
Martin, it's just a matter of who's going to scratch the itch and where.
And whether you're going to use your toes or your hand.
I'm glad we clarified that. Yeah. We've just read from our laptops both of your kind of professional and very formal introductions. We thought it would be a good way of starting if you guys want to actually go beyond the titles and just tell us about your professional journeys and what's brought you to this stage of your careers, if that's okay.
Well, I did medicine and studied medicine at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. And when I finished doing medicine, I went and did my internship at a hospital called Baragwanath Hospital. And that is in probably the largest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere, serving a population of Soweto. And I did that internship at the height of the riots that were going on in the political unrest in South Africa. And really, that internship, and Martin, you were busy there at the same time, it really cured me of like kind of mainstream medicine. I didn't want to do anything related to trauma after that because that had been traumatic in my life, seeing that. And the surgical sciences just, I was put off that. And one of the mentors to me at the time said, "What are you going to do?" And afterwards, where are you going to specialize? And he said to me, because I clearly didn't have an area that I was interested in, he said, well, what is your passion? And at that stage, I was a runner, and I was doing long distance running. And he said to me, you know what? Go and marry your passion in life and make that your passion in work in the most closely aligned area. So what's your passion? I said, running. He said, okay, there's a guy in South Africa by the name of Tim Noakes. Leave next week and go and see him. And I went and I traveled to Cape Town, and I saw Tim Noakes, and I asked him, how do I do this? At this stage, there was no career in sport and exercise medicine, just sports science. And so I went to Cape Town and did sports science, and then that turned into a PhD, and Martin will tell you the rest of how he fitted into that journey. And that is how we literally forged a career in sport and exercise medicine.
Yeah, well, thanks very much. Probably not. There's some similarities and differences to our story. I also, did medicine, but having said that, I've always been very interested in sports. I played a variety of different sports at school and so on. Not at an elite level, and I was happy to sort of be at a high school level, but it was an interest of mine. And then I did medicine. Also, I studied at the University of the Witwatersrand, WITS as it's called, and finished my medical training there. And at that time, also, I was slightly before Wayne finished, we were obliged by law to do compulsory military training, and we were drafted into the Defence Force, and I was a Defence Force doctor. But I happened to meet and know a colleague of mine who was a few years ahead of me, and through discussions and various motivations, he allowed me, or I got the opportunity to work at a rehabilitation center at the main military hospital, and essentially started and co-started a cardiac rehabilitation program at the hospital, which I then subsequently took over when my colleague left. And I did some research and also did my doctorate degree using some of the data, not in the setting of cardiac rehabilitation, but more in the prevention of gradual onset or overuse injuries. In that course, I did not remember really, but I treated an individual as a private patient who turned out to be the director of a large medical insurance company, pharmaceutical company. And he kindly offered me a substantial amount of money to start a sports and exercise medicine training program somewhere. So I went back to my WITS dean at the time, and maybe this is a lesson for someone who starts something completely new. The dean looked at me and he kind of said, I think I do remember you from med school. But you know what, my advice to you, contrary to Wayne's mentor's advice, he said, don't get yourself involved with something that's a Mickey Mouse project. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I then went also to Tim Noakes, who started the sports science program. And I came to the University of Cape Town saying, I've got funding for about 2 or 3 years. And they said, great, come and start a sports and exercise or sports medicine program at the time. And we did that. And that's how Wayne and I met in Cape Town. And the journey of developing sport and exercise medicine as a specialty started in 1990 at the University of Cape Town. And then there's been obviously a lot of growth and changes and things happening since then. But that's the start of the journey.
And that led to our practice being established.
Yeah,
which was we were in practice together for 28 years. So that
with some bumps.
Well, a couple of it's been a long forged path. Where there's been nothing. What we had done together with colleagues at different parts of the country has led to sport and exercise medicine being established as a specialty and having specialist recognition in South Africa. And that took
25 years.
So I think what you guys, both of you guys, are telling is that you got very good advice from a similar mentor, and maybe some other advice from a different individual out there. But what you can also see is that your paths crossed in a very early stage, and we've heard from some people at the conference here is that you guys can be regarded as a dynamic duo. Could you tell us a little bit more about where that started and how that has helped both of you growing?
Well, I'm going to kick off, Maury.
Yeah, of course.
Actually, when we started off, I thought that I was going to be one of the first doctors there that had started at University of Cape Town. And then Tim said, well, actually, Martin is coming, and he's also going to be doing sports medicine. And I had a small practice in Cape Town, and Martin had one in the Northern Hemisphere, and then in the northern suburbs. And we thought, oh, what's this guy doing on my turf? And he thought, well, what's this guy doing on my turf? And actually, we got kind of bumped for the first little while until Tim in his wisdom, actually remember that, said to us, listen guys, we're moving into this new building. You've actually got the same vision. Have a breakfast together and get this sorted out. And we had that, I even remember where the breakfast was.
Where was it?
It was in the Rondebosch Center there at the top. And we said, listen, how are we going to actually together plan the services in this new building? And from that moment on, when we had the same vision, it was just the easiest thing. And what an absolute pleasure to go through a career with a mate, you know, but alongside you, that we can share all these experiences. I mean, Modi, you know, we have so many times where we actually sit and talk about the old days. But can you imagine when we're in our 90s and we're looking back on this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, so for someone out there who's sort of in this early stage of their career, and you get involved with, you maybe get an opportunity in a certain unit, department, or whatever, is it's very important to actually seek people that are like-minded, that have got, and I won't use the word vision, have the same vision or the same philosophy, the same, if you're in clinical practice, the same type of practice. Seek them out and form the relationship, build a relationship, work at the relationship. Because if there's one thing that I can honestly say, I mean, it's not a 1 + 1 is 2, you know, it's 1 + 1 is, you know, 51 or something like that for us. So that's the one thing that's very evident. And then the other thing that was also evident of our journey, we may talk about this just a little bit more if you want, but it's not an easy journey to tackle something that does not exist. And my experience that I shared about the dean, that's not the first time that we had this. We've had several of these challenges, I should say, that required you to take a step back sometimes or a sideways step in order to go forward. And I don't think that I would be where I am perhaps right now, and maybe have contributed in some way to the development of this if it wasn't for this guy. Because we've got many examples of when there was a tough time that I maybe went through, or both of us went through, but when I went through, then Wayne was there, and similarly, probably the other way around. So how to sum all of that up is find a friend, and find friends, actually, and work your way around your career development around like-minded people who've got the same vision.
And you know, what also comes to mind, Martin, is that, I mean, every week or day you have like ups and downs in it, and having a good mate where we've got similar like kind of interests. The beauty has been when you remind me and I remind you not to take ourselves too seriously. And to
I think you remind me more than I remind. Then I just go for the ride. You know?
But it's like kind of, you know, the most important part is about having fun in our day-to-day, even though things can be really serious. The concept of actually enjoying what we do and with a large element of fun is hopefully something that we pass on to our students. And I think that that's really an important theme.
In Afrikaans, we have a saying for that, that is a moerse lekker thing to do, which just means it's a very nice thing to do.
Moerse lekker and moerse snacks. Yeah.
Moerse snacks, moerse lekker, moerse a lot of things.
We've got to, he understands Dutch, so we've got to be careful.
No, but I mean, this has also been the theme of this meeting, actually, that, we encourage our students to have a moerse lekker time.
Yeah, well, we've had the pleasure of spending time with some of your PhD students, and they all speak incredibly warmly of the support, mentorship, and sponsorship that you provide. One thing that's just been really interesting listening to that journey, and I guess I might just ask is, to where you've got now. I mean, we all know you both, Wayne, for your expertise, especially around Paralympics and disabled athletes, and then Martin, yourself around especially respiratory illnesses and infections, and how that applies, especially in multi-games or multi-sport kind of game settings. Did you always set out with a deliberate vision of that's where you wanted to end up? Or was it something that you talked about taking sideways steps backwards? Did you just follow interests? I'd be keen to explore how you ended up. Yeah.
For me, that's really a good question because actually in my early career, I was the CMO of the South African Olympic team for 2 Olympic Games, Athens and Sydney, thrust into that position at far too young an age. Looking back, I was like kind of ready, green to go into that position. And in Beijing, the Olympic Committee wrote me a letter that transferred me to the Paralympic Games. And I absolutely refused. I thought, this is for second level sport. This is not elite sport, and I didn't want to waste my time. And I learned such a lesson because I had to, thank heavens, a colleague of mine said to me, listen, Wayne, go there, you're going to learn something not only about parasport, but you're going to learn about yourself. And I went to that first Games. Remember when I came back from that Games with eyes like this? And when I decided to actually, this is such a phenomenal, like almost a spiritual awakening of various things in life, I decided, let me go to the literature and learn more about this. And I figured out that there's absolutely very little out there in the literature. And I thought, what an opportunity. This is like where I want to be. There's nothing out there in the science. I'm in a position where we're doing research and we're doing epidemiology, and we can do a lot of the studies along the cycle of prevention. And that became my passion in sports medicine, but also the research focus. And it was just a very fortunate place to be in at the right time, where we started, doing all the studies that we have been able to do. So that was the journey into parasport.
Yeah, I think a lot of people listening to this perhaps would be in a stage of their career where they kind of trying to plot out their research career, and I've got a lot of thoughts about that. Sometimes these things are determined by just circumstances. Your supervisor or the university that you've got a position at or something has got a research focus area in one or other area, and you just get drafted into that. And sometimes that's great, and other times there's a mismatch between what Wayne is speaking about, the passion for it, and this. And then after a few years, finish maybe even a PhD, and then actually you think, that's not really what I want to do, and you go. So my own research journey was one that I, as a clinician, so the one thing is I said to myself very early on, I never not want to do the clinical work. So we've always tried to do that, and I see that in Wayne as well. So we always did that. So I would say to myself, if I do describe it as a clinician researcher. And so my research career was driven by clinical problems that I couldn't solve, or that were just evident there. And when you go to the literature, there's very little. So let me give you an example. I've just come out of the session now with this, I don't know if you've been at the session of the cardiac stuff. So we were both involved, but we actually were at these races. We were asked to provide some medical care, and obviously gung-ho go in there. And I remember working in this medical tent, and later sort of taking charge of the medical tent, just that this was a major problem. We're promoting healthy activity, exercise, and I remember, having to contact the family of somebody who had a cardiac arrest and died. And I thought to myself, this can't be good. What is the problem? And besides that, the medical tent was just full of people, and they're all sick. Some of them not so sick, but others very, very sick. And so to try and say to myself, take a step back and say, this is not good. We're promoting a good drug, but this has got major side effects. And so that started the journey on these endurance sports. And the same thing with other areas in my career where, other research areas like cramping, muscle cramping. That was the single most reason why they were all lying there. They were all cramping. Tried to read up about it, and they said it's all dehydration, electrolytes. And then we started studies and disputed that. And now, the textbook is changed with one line, and it takes 10 years to change one line in a textbook. And maybe the respiratory stuff, I didn't really think of respiratory as my main area, but the field has just not got any data in it. And so, again, yes, athlete sits in front of you, they're sick, they're asking you, the coach asking you, when can I play, and so on and so forth, and we don't have the answers to that. So is that always the right thing to do if you want to only advance your career? Probably not, because there are, research bodies, for example, that want you to have your golden thread, that's the only thing you do, and the more you research in your golden thread, well, I've got a bronze thread this way and a silver thread that way, and and so that doesn't help you. It may not be to your advantage from if the pursuit of your research career is more of the recognition, as a researcher in this one area. But people differ, so I do understand that. So basically, from my side, besides the passion, is also where your clinical interest lies. Don't be afraid to change if you've identified a new area that others have not really, and you see it as a clinical problem, to actually pursue that as a research career.
Yeah, and I think from the past few answers we've heard a very successful path in different directions, maybe some of them not so expected, maybe others were expected. Could you maybe tell us a little bit about decisions that you've made that you regret looking back now, or some decisions that you would have done differently in your career?
It's very, if you're happy with where you are at the moment, then by definition, there will be few regrets, because the regrets actually are just opportunities to change directions. So, there are areas in my personal life where I actually look at and say, well, do I regret that? I can't, because actually I'm very blessed where I am today with my family and my job and the work and my friends. And so I don't look at them as regrets. I think what I would have done in my career a bit differently is not stay in one area or one environment for too long. And after being together for 28 years, we went in different directions. And for me, moving into a different academic home was really very invigorating. And I think for both of us, that was a very important part. And the message I have for young people who are in the early stages of their career is to think of different places to do all the stages. Perhaps it's not a good idea to do your undergrad and then your master's and PhD or postdoc in the same environment. And kind of spread it a little bit and have various different mentors at different points in time, and get a more diverse exposure. And I think that I was lucky in that when it did happen and I did change, it was in the right timing. It could have happened earlier, but looking back, it's absolutely fine.
Yeah. Yeah, so I can just echo the same general thoughts about regrets. I don't have any major regrets about decisions professionally that I've taken. I'm also in a very, very fortunate and blessed space to have, a life partner, my wife Rihanna, with me, who's walked along the road. I've got 4 fantastic kids, and I'm very happy to have 2 grandkids. You've also got 2.
One grandkid.
No, but you need to work on that. So generally, I don't have any major regrets. Have I ever questioned whether I really did the right thing to not pursue a straightforward, pathway? And I can just go back that I actually had a position as a registrar in South Africa, a resident in cardiology. And that was what I was going to do. And have there been times when I thought to myself, maybe I should have done cardiology? The answer to that is yes. But then when you reflect back and you actually have people around you, that, that sort of thought or feeling will just dissipated. So I don't have any major regrets. And I can honestly say that. Would I have done things differently? Maybe the one area that I think that I just want to encourage people. I'm not saying that we didn't do it. It was I have regret about that, but I think I would have, if I could have, I would have spent a little bit more time during a sort of mid phase of my career to actually give more time maybe, but we didn't have the financial resources to have, for instance, PhD students. So where we are in South Africa at the moment, there's a little bit of, if you take a broad view of doctors and academia, there's a bit of a hiatus of doctors who've got PhDs, but it's very difficult for a doctor in South Africa to do a PhD. But maybe we could have done a little bit more raising funding to try and do that. We did try. And so in the latter part, the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, I certainly have focused very much attention onto that. So in terms of, could we have done that earlier? Maybe we could have done that earlier, I don't know. But, I'm happy to say that we've now at least, got lots of, not lots, but we've got PhD students. So no major regret, but maybe that's one area that we could have done, or I could have done a little bit better.
Yeah, I think you bring up a important point, is that I wish we were coming from a non-resource limited environment like we do in South Africa, because the lack of funding and the disparity in funding in the African continent in general, and certainly in the environments that we have to work in, could use better funding. And I think that has held us back.
Yeah, but okay, so you're 100% right. The only thing I would say is that actually, I think we were able to convert that and actually try, and we did a lot with very little. And so it's better to get used to doing a lot with very little than to do a lot with, do a lot with a lot, or do a very little with a lot. I got that right.
I don't know. I'm going to have to rewatch this tape to actually go back.
Wayne, because
it might come back to
you can do a lot with a lot, but you can also do very little with a lot, which is the bigger problem.
It depends on the hand or the foot.
Yeah, but I've got the right hand. So.
One thing, it's to be very frank, it's a pleasure to be here chatting to you guys today, and I think you're both very reflective. I guess for people who, like ourselves, are doing PhDs and things at the moment, I guess it would be silly of us not to ask, when you have PhD students, when you have people coming to you with research ideas, I imagine you're approached 1 million times a week on these kinds of things. What can we do as early career researchers, clinicians, to make your guys' lives easier? What do you look for in students, in young doctors who are looking to progress?
For me, that is I look for somebody who has the ability to actually work in a team. I think that that is the most important thing for me. And also that I can put them in a certain environment and they have that magical initiative spark to take that and run with it. To me, that is really important. I like the people I'm going to be spending time with to have a good sense of humor and have that humor as their gateway to resilience. And I've been very lucky that the students that I've had and been involved with, most of them have had this group of attributes. But yeah, that initiative is the most important thing, I would think.
Firstly, thank you. That's a very good question. And I don't know if I've got it right, in terms of that. But I think that when you, as a potential PhD student, have conversations with potential supervisors, my advice would be understand that this is and don't get me wrong if I say it's like a 4-year, 5-year marriage, because you have to be sure. And you have to be sure as the PhD student that you've got the right person. So as much as you're asking us the question, you've got to ask the same question. And so when a student approaches me, it is about a lot of things, but probably by the time they get, the academic part, the ability, the intellectual part, the marks, and that's all dealt with. It has to do for me about the personality of the individual, which is pretty much encompassed in a little bit what Wayne has said. And I've had students with a variety of different, personality traits that are more prominent than others. So it's not about which one is more prominent than the other, but it's you need to be able to work out that you're going to work at this for 4 or 5 years. There are obviously obvious things like just honesty. For me, a big thing that I put quite a lot of emphasis on is I want to fully understand why you want to do this. And I actually would ask them to go back and think again and go back and think again. And they must convince me that they have got very good reasons. Doesn't matter what the reason, but they've got to have very good reasons to why you want to do this. Because when the chips are down, when things don't go right, you have to be in a position where you can draw on the why I want to do this as the inner strength that will see you through. And COVID is a very good example. I had a PhD student who had to completely shift her PhD during the time of COVID. And I know it was tough for her. It's also tough for me. But because of the personality and the way, the reason for doing it was right, we got through that, and actually it was a fantastic experience. So those are a few things. But personality and, having a sense of humor, honesty, punctual, hardworking. For me, life balance is also an important thing. This mustn't consume your entire life. That's not healthy, not in the short term, but also not in the long term. So there are a few things that I look for.
And I think that maybe circles back to what you mentioned with the reflection. The self-reflection is at a very high level, I could say at this moment. But just traveling back to when you were young researchers, clinicians, what advice would you give yourself in retrospect, sitting here, to your younger version?
Well, I'm happy you answered the questions the first time. So you're doing a good job and giving me a bit of time to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, if I look at the younger me, I was very, very competitive. And I think that would, I was anxious and competitive. Anxious that I was missing out on, if I focus on this area, I'm missing out on all of this. And if I focus here, I'm missing out on all of this. So that's part of the reason why I liked sport and exercise medicine, because I could focus on orthopaedics, but I also needed to know about the ECG and cardiology. And today, I think I would say to myself, listen, have a main area of focus. You can look at all of these other things, But you don't need to be the leader in all of these things. Just chill and relax. And I was also one of those who kind of would work at night and work in the early morning. Was that really necessary? I don't know. I think I could, as a younger person, have had a better work-life balance. So I think that's what I would give myself is just chill, and what you are involved with is not necessarily life and death. The sun comes up and it goes down, and go and get some chill time and exercise time, and just kind of relax and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, the younger me, almost by definition, there's a certain personality trait that you will find in most individuals at this conference and so on. So we're all competitive, hardworking, type A type personalities. And I would say one of the things that Wayne has just mentioned is guard against that. Just guard against that. You have a life, and often it's your PhD comes at a time when, either you're recently married, or you've got relationships. Maybe even like in my case, I did my PhD. My eldest son was born, and so look after the rest of that. The other thing would be that if I look at the younger me, I was going to answer this research question, which is going to change everything in the whole world, and nobody ever is going to have another medial tibial stress syndrome injury. And so guard against an expectation that exceeds what you could possibly do, and be happy to just contribute to the field, be satisfied with that. So because there were times when I was frustrated that I didn't solve the entire world's problems or this particular research question. The other thing is, it's an amazing opportunity when you're young, and I think I may have not done enough, but we didn't have as much opportunity as you guys have at the moment, of various forms of skill acquisition. So, broaden so yes, you've got your PhD, that stuff that you do, but broaden, it's a bit like Wayne said, broaden out the horizon a little bit. Learn about biostatistics, learn about ethics, learn about the social sciences, which I didn't really have an opportunity to do. And there are so many resources at your disposal. There's just ask ChatGPT, I think, is what you, and you'll find that. So broaden that. But if I can circle back that to the lifestyle, and just be aware. Don't miss. I had to check myself several times. To make sure that I don't, focus only on one thing, and not get that work balance. And the test of that, whether you're successful in that, only comes now. And then you don't want to end up with having a regret about that.
Yeah. Again, an important role here in how our families have played their part. Certainly, I think any friction between my wife and myself is her telling me, Wayne, you actually doing too much. And I'm so thankful to her for actually being the barometer, and our kids as well. We got, I think each of us have got 4 wonderful children, and they've also keep us on the straight and narrow, and that's a remarkable thing.
No, for sure. I'm aware we've spent a lot of time looking back, but I think it would be interesting to know what have you both got lined up next? Where do you see your respective kind of specialist interests going in the future, and what are you most excited to be working on over the next few years?
Well, let me kick off with that. For me, what I'm looking so forward to is and Martin will tell you a little bit more, he's just moved back down to Cape Town. So, kind of get back into things. Yeah. I think for me, in the next 10 years, what I'd really like to do is have play a small part in advancing the medicine and science in the Paralympic movement. With my recent position, I think I'm in a position to make a contribution to that and advance the field. and actually whet the appetite of some younger researchers to get involved into that like wide open field and make a dent there. So for me, that's important. And then I think that as I go ahead, that my clinical practice will become even more important than. So getting to this age, what one's going to do is slowly have less of an academic role and go into the next phase, which is going to be, again, increasing clinical contribution as well. So I find clinical practice, there's just the most wonderful reward of treating somebody and that person giving you that immediate reward of saying, wow, you've made a difference, thank you. And I think that's something that we've really had as a common theme together. And I'd say to Martin, actually met this guy today and just was so wonderful in his receptiveness of the intervention that we were doing. And I look forward to being able to do more of that. And then again, just focusing on that balance, doing a lot more hiking, that type of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm a few years ahead of the game in terms of where you have changes in your career path. So in South Africa, when you turn my age, then they by law you retire. They retire you from the university. So I had the experience of that over the last 2 months. And so that's not for the young researcher to think about yet, but certainly for somebody who's a little bit more closer to that, you've got 5 to 10 years left before that. I would make one major point is plan. And you need to it's almost a little bit being another, young PhD student. You have to plan what you're going to do next. And so I would say planning is an important part. And the planning then is about what are the things that are really important in life in the next 10, 20 years or whatever. And this may come as a surprise to people, but it's not actually about publishing another paper or fighting for the first or senior authorship on another paper. I'm beyond that, actually. No, I won't say that. I was going to say that, to have another paper is not that important. It is important, but it isn't actually important because it's, that's not at this point in your career. The other thing that I want to mention when you're getting to this stage is a very important principle which we haven't really discussed before. Is that, and this would be my advice, and it may differ from other people's advice, but my advice is to never get yourself involved in a situation with a program, project, position, whatever it is, that you cannot walk away from. Because if you can't walk, and because at some point you're going to have to walk away from, sometimes they will actually have to kick you out, and you don't want that. If they're walking away, it must be your decision. So you have to be able to walk away from that. So as you get along in your career and you get to these various stages, you're going to have to make that decision of not being the CMO of the IPC anymore. And I can say that to Wayne because we're chatting about it. But the point is you've got to be able to walk away from. So I think that's another important part of this phase. And then I would say there's time in this next phase to actually talk to younger people and maybe be a reflection board for them. And I think that's an important role. It's also a very satisfying role. Clinical work, clinical patients. So I'm going to do more clinical practice. Absolutely right. So short-term, very, very much a short, medium, long-term reward to do that. So we are fortunate as doctors that we can do that. And then I do want to spend more time with my family. Not that I haven't. I think we've done a reasonable job on that. But I've spent more time with my family. I want to take my old Land Cruiser with a rooftop tent, and I want to just go and spend a couple of weeks, just enjoying other passionate stuff or other things that I'm passionate about. So plan it and balance it, and so there is definitely a life, that is after your formal career, as that maybe diminishes, but fill it up with good things.
I think I can say on behalf of all younger listeners that we're very inspired, and just having had a small look to the right side, I think that was one of the last answers for this podcast. And yeah, what I mentioned before, very inspired by all your thoughts. Maybe some last thoughts from your side.
Well, from just you guys being so reflective, I think, and us reflecting on that, I think there's a huge amount of professional learnings from it, but also stages of life that we're both in, and people in similar situations. I think a lot of personal lessons as well, which I definitely personally appreciate, and I know that people watching or listening will also appreciate. No, so genuinely a huge thank you for your time. I wasn't even aware that we were almost done. So yeah, really appreciate your time and expertise. Thank you very much.
And thank you for giving us the opportunity. You know, this is so nice to be able to share this moment, Molly, and to actually reflect in a way that's hopefully going to make a contribution.
Yeah, and if I can just, my last word is, I just want to wish you absolutely all the best and great success and a fantastic work life, professional life and personal life, and wish you all of that.
Thanks very much. Thank you.